Hello, people. Andrew here, talking about comics from a reader, collector, speculator, investor point of view. And today I'm in that order of importance to myself. And today I'm looking at the Avengers during the Bronze Age, specifically the period from 1969 to 1976. Basically, there are two blocks in this. There's the earlier stuff that was written by Roy Thomas, and starting at issue 105, which was November 1972, the writing is taken over by primarily by Steve Englehart. Okay, so I don't have to tell you what it's about. It's about the Avengers, but what do we got in the two versions? Well, I can't speak a lot about the Roy Thomas material because I don't have a lot. I haven't read a lot of his material, so my opinion on that has to wait until I read some more of that. But what I have read, I've enjoyed. It's really kind of a Silver Age goofiness to it. Everything is very big. The panels are big. The characters have big actions. The motivations are very simple. This one here, for example, issue number 78. This is an introduction to a group of villains called the Lethal Legion. And actually, there's a whole whack of different groups and groupings that are introduced throughout the this run of Roy Thomas's Avengers, and they all seem to favor alliteration. You have the Squadron Sinister, who shows up in issue 69, the Squadron Supreme in issue 70, the Lethal Legion here in 78, and in 83 you got the Lady Liberators. He also created the Invaders in issue 71, but they're not alliterated. So the basic idea on a book like this, for example, is that each one of these characters from the Lethal Legion has had a bone to pick with the various individual Avengers, so they band together with just the whole idea of beating the crap out of the Avengers. That's it. That's your storyline for what happens in the Avengers. It's as I said, it's kind of goofy fun. I mean, there's not a lot. Subtlety isn't the word of the day here. It's very big, very bold. Even the dialogue between the characters and the character development is very melodramatic and overblown. But I consider this somewhat like Roy Thomas started writing material in the Silver Age, and this is just a continuation of that tone that he was writing. So I enjoy it for that, and I enjoyed the few issues that I've read of Roy Thomas's from this age or from this era, because they were kind of goofy fun, and I'm looking forward to reading more. He was also responsible during this time that he wrote the Kree Skrull War that happened starting somewhere at issue number 89. I think it ran for about like 7 issues up, or maybe 8. It ran up to, I think, 97. And then there was a 3-issue block that he had illustrated by Barry Windsor Smith featuring a whole whack of Avengers, ending his term with issue number 104 in October of 72. So there's a lot of material here to read that I haven't read, but what I've read so far has been kind of fun. As I say, this is the first appearance of the Lethal Legion. It's not the only first appearance. As I say, the Squadron Supreme was kind of effective, and here in issue number 80, he introduces Red Wolf. And one of it's kind of a beat up coffee, but that's what you get. One of the things you can see in the Red Wolf is that by the end of the story, the Avengers have decided that there are 3 different tasks before them, and what happens is the party splits up, and they start investigating the different ones depending on what they feel about the situation. And Captain America, he says, "Is this the end of the Avengers?" It's like, what? Because you split the party? But it's that kind of melodrama that's in the dialogue and in the scenarios here. As I say, subtlety is not not the order of the day. So you have here issue number 80, the first appearance of Red Wolf. And this is a really bad copy I've got of issue number 98. This is illustrated by Barry Windsor Smith. And I just wanted to mention about, I bought this from a store. This is on me, because sometimes when you see a book in a store and it is and it isn't. I mean, I appreciated what the store did. I trusted the owners of the store to not put a price on a book that's the center page is detached, and some of the pages are tanned and what have you. I should have taken the book out of the plastic and I read it. But as I said, I had faith and trust in the owners of the shop. I did not know at the time that the owners of the shop were struggling to make ends meet, and in fact, they closed the doors to their store about 6 months or maybe even less after I bought this particular book. So it's quite possible that they were just maybe inflating a few things here and there to try and make money, but they should have just told me, and then we would come up with a better deal. Anyways, that's what happens. So sometimes when you buy a book and it's on a price and you think it's a good price or whatever, it doesn't hurt to check a book from time to time. As I say, unfortunately, I had a lot more faith in these guys, but I didn't know the financial situation. So that is ultimately on me. Anyways, so this is my reader copy of issue number 98. And then this would be the final issue of the Roy Thomas run, issue number 104. As I say, I don't have a lot of the Roy Thomas thing, so I can't make a lot of comment, but I am looking forward to it because it has that Silver Age goofiness to it. And as I say, there was a number of different first appearances. The Squadron Sinister, Supreme, Invaders, Zodiac makes their first appearance here, Archon, Lethal Legion, Red Wolf, Lady Liberators. So a fair amount, and the artists range. There's the brothers Buscema, or is it Buscema? I've heard it say both ways. Sal and John, they work on here. As I said, the Barry Windsor Smith stuff. Neil Adams worked on the Kree Skrull War. So a lot of top talent was working on these books. So then we come to issue number 105, which I don't have. I haven't read all of Steve Englehart's material. This is the first one I've got in his issue number 109. And his tone is slightly different. Now, Steve Englehart, prior to his term on the Avengers, had only written one significant series for Marvel. He had written more material, but the only one of any significance was he wrote the stories for Amazing Adventures issues number 11 through 17. And this was the story of the Beast, when the Beast turned from human to his furry self, and he was a gray beast as well, not a blue beast. And this was written by Steve Englehart. That's his major contribution to Marvel up to this point, and now he's given the Avengers. Not only is he given the Avengers, but shortly after it's the Defenders and Captain America. So they had a fair amount of faith in this writer. Now, the editor on this particular book, this stretch in time, is Roy Thomas, and you can feel his influence in the stories because they do have some of that Silver Age type of feel with big events and a lot of melodrama. I mean, even this one, it's a nice cover, but it's like, Hawkeye's no longer going to be part of the Avengers. It's not really a big deal because a lot of Avengers have quit prior to this and more Avengers will quit after this. But, it's the melodrama of the moment. And so there's some of that melodrama and the bigger goofiness of the Silver Age that is carried over into Steve Englehart's run. And I didn't particularly enjoy the first 2/3 of his run. The first third is very much like a Silver Age type of story with big characters doing goofy things. And a lot of melodrama. We get into the melodrama in a bit, but I just want to start the next one to make a note of. This is issue number 112. This is the first appearance of Mantis. So Steve Englehart started to introduce new characters as well. So off on a different tangent. This is the first appearance of Mantis in issue number 112, and I'll get back to her. So one of the other things that happened was this is part of the Avengers Defenders War. Again, this is kind of a Silver Age concept. I mean, kids like to read their heroes versus heroes, and here you got the Vision versus Silver Surfer. This is, I think, the first meeting of these two, and it's part of the Avengers Defenders War. But it's the setup is rather bizarre. I mean, both groups are seeking the same item, which has been shattered into 6 different pieces, and it's their job to go and find these 6 different pieces, unite them, and somehow save the Black Knight. So they're both after the same thing. But for reasons, Avengers don't trust Doctor Strange and his oddball group. So that's given further weight when Loki shows up and says, "Ooh, don't you trust that Doctor Strange? He's trying to, not do nasty stuff to the Black Knight. So believe what I have to say. Don't listen to Doctor Strange or any of these other characters on his team, like the Silver Surfer or Namor. They're all plotting against you." So based on Loki's recommendation, they go into these battles, and you get to see hero battle hero searching for these six missing pieces. Ultimately they get together at the end and say, "Hey, we're both looking for the same thing." It's like, but that's a very Silver Age type of storyline, just to get the characters together to fight. And there is some of that in the earlier issues of Steve Englehart. This is another prime example of that sort of idea. The Zodiac actually turned out to be a more interesting band of villains later on. I mean, there are 12 members, each one representing one aspect of the Zodiac. There's a great story by David Anthony Kraft in issues, I think it's like 46 or 47 to 50, of the Defenders. That's a really good storyline. And the Zodiac becomes the Zodiac Crime Cartel, and each member is, stationed in a different city in America, and they're part of a big crime family, which is kind of interesting. But here, all they are is big goofy guys in costumes, and they've got a weapon of alien technology that they figured out how to sterilize all the people in Manhattan that were born under the sign of Gemini. And they're going to, this is to show the world, and then we will take over the world. And it's like, really? But really, in the Silver Age, that would be an acceptable, story and plot. So this is what happens here, and this is sort of the goofball stuff that I expect from the Silver Age, and hoping for better when it comes down to the Bronze. I figure, we're beyond this point. But as I say, Steve Englehart is working out some of his storylines here. This is, as I say, a pretty weak one. He's not sure exactly what to do with Thor and Iron Man, and often in these earlier issues, they're the first two to go down. They get bashed. Somebody grabs a foot of one and smashes them into the other one, and they're both knocked out. Now, these are guys that can take down mountains and things like that, but just banging their heads together like a couple of coconuts, it puts them out of commission. I don't know if it's because he didn't like the character or didn't know what to do with them, or there were too many characters, but they were often taken out of the game very, very early. Things did start to change in issue number 128. At least I noticed it. This is where the Scarlet Witch and Agatha Harkness get together. Agatha Harkness takes her on as a pupil to teach her how to better control her magic, or to utilize it in a more effective means. It starts to get into a little bit more character development. Less bashing heads about, but developing stories and developing characters and developing stories that with a longer and greater plot. Speaking of the longer and greater plot, this is where I'm talking a little bit about Mantis again, who's involved with Kang. This is just a very good Kang cover. But the Mantis storyline, it went on like seemingly forever. It was all about Kang wanting to mate with the Celestial Madonna. And there's no clear definition of what a Celestial Madonna is. It has, you can attach religious significance to it, or whatever. So he wants to have a kid with the Celestial Madonna, which turns out to be Mantis. But for what purpose? What is this kid going to do? And how? It's not clearly defined. It's not clearly explained what miraculous thing will happen. I mean, if you base it on other religions, then a child from the Celestial Madonna would be everything opposite to what Kang is, because he's a conqueror. So I don't know what kind of mystic kid this is supposed to be. This story with the Celestial Madonna goes on seemingly forever. Steve Englehart has tons of backstory about the origin of Mantis. Geez, the origin of Mantis is like 5 issues long. It's like goes through so many pages and pages of backstory. We even get a little backstory about the Kree and Skrull and why they first started fighting. It's There's tons of backstory involved in this, all about Mantis, who really doesn't do an awful lot within the Avengers. Sure, she fights. Sure, she's a martial artist, and she's strong at times, very very strong, and she's got some sort of telepathic or empathic abilities. It never clearly defined. And exactly why she's going to be the Celestial Madonna, and the storyline just goes on and on and on. In fact, after this issue here, they released a giant size Avengers number 2, and you'll get a giant size Avengers number 3, and then the whole thing ends up in giant size Avengers number 4. But these giant size books are, in addition to the monthly releases, released about every 2 or 3 months. That's how much paper and story that Steve Englehart needed to tell the story of this Celestial Madonna. And it just seemed to drag on and on and on. I am not a favor of this particular story. Some people really liked it, but I am not one of those people. I was happy when it came to an end with giant size Avengers number 4, and then we could move on from there. Along the way, of course, I just wanted to show this was the Legion of the Unliving. Again, this one is kind of goofy. I haven't read the second part of this particular one, so I don't know if it better defines and clarifies who they are. From what I can get, Kang just yanks them out of time, but are they before they died, and so it's the shock value of seeing them? Does Kang have some sort of resurrection powers? It's not clearly defined. But here we have the first appearance of the Legion of the Unliving. So it does come to an end, and then the better part of Steve Englehart's material. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. One other thing about that Celestial Madonna stuff is the whole romance thing happening between Vision and Scarlet Witch, and then you've got Mantis and the Swordmaster. But Mantis is starting making goo-goo eyes at Vision, and Wanda's getting jealous of the goo-goo eyes, and Vision saying, "What? I'm an android. I'm not sure about all these love things." And the swordsman has his heart broken. It feels like such a teenage romance thing happening in there. Again, it's just I'm looking for something a little bit more than that. This is issue number 136, just prior to when the Beast actually joins or becomes part of the Avengers, sort of. This is a reprint issue from Amazing Adventures number 11, or is it 12? With art by Tom Sutton and Mike Pluke. I really like the artwork on the inside of this. But this is the launch of having the Beast introduced into the Avengers. Here's where I think that the stories by Steve Englehart start to take really good shape. I really liked his final run here from 137 to 151. Now, some of it may be, nostalgia, because this is the first Avengers book that I read. But I'm trying to be as objective as I can in some respects, to take a look and say, is it influenced because of the nostalgia, or is it a better read? And it is a better read. Subjectively, objectively, it is a better read. The stories are more involved, more happening there. The dialogue is better. The characterizations are solid. He has an idea now what to do with Thor and with Iron Man. They play a more of a pivotal role than just being bashed together. He has no problems splitting the party and doesn't make a big thing out of the deal of splitting the party. And there are some interesting additions to this collective in the Avengers. This is the Beast trying to make his audition for the Avengers. And you'll see Moondragon in the back, and the reason she was there is because there was a call earlier set out for Captain Marvel that she intercepted and came to Earth to respond to that. Her dialogue with Thor throughout the next 12 issues or so is interesting as they discuss what it means to be a god. So I really liked the run continuing, starting in issue number 137. And Steve Englehart also did a little bit of time travel. You're talking about Kang, because this is a part of a Kang storyline. Kang is really angry at the Avengers at this point for, taking away his celestial Madonna. So he just wants his revenge and he wants to beat the crap out of the Avengers. So, you can see that he's going to be involved with time travel. And he is. Iron Man's not in this one. Uh, and I liked this particular time travel. The Avengers went back in the past and they run into all of the Old West characters from Marvel's past. It was a lot of fun. The events that happen in here would not adversely affect events that would happen in the future. The Avengers don't do a lot. They don't drop a lot of technology. People would say, have some strange visions and stuff. But a lot of the times, back in the past, people did have strange visions. A lot of, mythology and heroes come from that without written records, and there are some written records, obviously, but not super detailed. So who knows what these people were thinking? Anyways, it's nice to have. It was fun to read the old Western heroes team up with the Avengers to deal with Kang. Part of this run included the first appearance of Hellcat, Patsy Walker. Now, Patsy Walker is an old character from 1944. It's her first appearance from Miss America magazine #2. She went on to be featured in a number of Marvel books that were sort of like an Archie style of book. You had Patsy Walker, you had Patsy and Hetty. Part of there was Millie the Model. There was a number of books that were like that, and Patsy Walker was part of that collective. Steve Englehart used her in the Beast run and felt that he hadn't finished that particular storyline, so he brought her back to the Avengers, and just as the thing developed, Hellcat became available, and so she dons the Hellcat costume, or the cat costume, and becomes Hellcat. I really like this run. It was basically your two storylines. You've got the Kang storyline, and you've got the Serpent Crown storyline. And I liked both of these storylines. I thought they were well developed, great characterization. At this point, we're looking at artwork by George Perez, some of his early stuff, and he does amazing artwork. It seemed to be firing on all cylinders during this particular run. Issue 145 and 146 are kind of a filler issue, but he comes back with 147. I just wanted to show you this one here with 149. It looks like a Kirby cover. Because the Squadron Supreme were involved in this conflict regarding the Serpent Crown. And again, that was a good storyline. I liked the Serpent Crown storyline. I liked the ending to the Kang storyline as well. I thought it was very good. And then we come to issue number 150. This was supposed to be the last issue of Steve Englehart's run, and the idea is that to form a new team and get the new writer to have a chance to start with a team that he wants to start with. But, the editors blame Steve Englehart for not having his material done in time, as mentioned in this issue here, number 151. They say this is really the way that we were supposed to end it here, but we had Steve Englehart didn't have the script in time, so we had to extend it. And then you get a new team that arises at the end of issue number 151. I don't know how much of that is true, and I don't think it's fair to throw Steve Englehart under the bus. I think there were probably a number of changes going on here, because following this, Jim Shooter takes a bit of a hand at the Marvel, and it takes his first stab at the Avengers. And it was probably an idea of what team do you want to work with, because we're switching to a new writer. So what team are you looking to put together? And you've got to make it so that this makes sense. What are you going to do with Moondragon and Hellcat, for example? They have their moments. So where are we going with these characters? So this is what happens at the end of 151 is that they pare it down to seven members, so that we can launch with 152 with a new writer. I think it's the same artist. I think I'll double check that, but I think George Perez does continue doing some Avengers later on. But the new writer, I believe, is Jim Shooter. We'll check that when we come back to the Avengers next time. So as far as do I recommend it? Well, as I say, for the Roy Thomas stuff, I'm looking forward to reading more of his material, but I don't know how it's going to read. I don't know how well it's written, if I'll enjoy it as much as the few issues that I've picked up. But I'll be looking for it just for the Silver Age goofiness of the time. The Steve Englehart material. I didn't care for his stuff for 2/3 of the way, but I really think he picked up with issue 128 when he started with, getting into some of the characterization. I thought the Celestial Madonna storyline went on far too long and it was not that interesting, but I think it really all clicked and came together with issue 137 to basically 151. That particular block I would recommend even if you weren't an Avengers reader. I think it's a really good 12 issue run or whatever it is. So that one I would recommend. As far as collectability, there's a lot of artists in here. As I said, there's the Buscemas or Buscemas, George Tuska, Neil Adams, Barry Windsor Smith, George Perez. A lot of different artists working on a number of different issues throughout, so you have artists to pursue. Some oddball characters. You've got Hellcat, you've got Moondragon, Squadron Supreme, first appearance of Red Wolf. So there are some different collectibles there. As far as the speculation is concerned, there are some new characters: Red Wolf, Mantis, and Hellcat, as well as the groups, the Invaders, the Squadron Supreme. They've had some movement as well. You know, the groups are okay. I mean, there is people that collect the first appearance of a group. I prefer like the original characters, but I do like groups as well when they first form. But original characters. And so in that case, I would be looking more at Red Wolf and Mantis, and then some at Hellcat because she's an amalgamation of a couple of characters. As I said, Patsy Walker showed up way back in 1944, and the cat's costume showed up in 1972. This is the first time that the two of them are together in issue number 144, but it's sort of an amalgamation of existing pieces to create the Hellcat. Surprisingly, though, when I say speculation on those books, the Mantis book from issue number 112, I just bought that last year for $35, and that's a relatively inexpensive cost for a Marvel character, and she's had her time in the sun. So, I don't know that I would spec on a book like that when I can, as I say, buy that nice copy for $35. I don't know that I would invest and buy 9/8 of any of this stuff. If I was going to go anywhere with that sort of thing, I would think maybe Red Wolf has the greatest potential to break out and become worth a little bit more. But again, I would just be looking for a high quality issue, number 80 of Red Wolf, as opposed to getting one slabbed with anything with a 9.8 that's a key issue, and that is a key issue, a minor key, is going to be worth a significant amount of money. But you're going to pay a significant amount of money for that book regardless. Your better bet as far as if you want to make an investment is, so if I pay a high price for that, is it going to be even higher as time goes on? I don't know anything at all about that, but I would buy a sharp looking copy of number 80 out of all of them. I would get the Hellcat. I would get the Mantis too. I did. $35 was a pretty good price. So the Avengers, the Bronze Age, it feels more like it was a Silver Age, and then followed by a Bronze Age with a young writer finding his way, ultimately coming up with some better stories. And ultimately, I did like some of his stuff later on. His Captain America material that he wrote at the time, I thought was pretty good. But so overall, I don't know that it would be so much that you'd be interested in reading. I do think that the last bit of Steve Englart's 137, 151 is worth a read, even if you're not an Avengers fan. And if you're into that goofy, fun stuff, maybe you want to pick up some of the Roy Thomas material. That's it for now. When I next talk about Avengers, I'll talk about the next 40 issues or so that get us out of the 70s. Until then, be good to yourself, be good to others, and we'll talk again soon.